Radical.
Welcome to Flea Market Stories, documenting one man's journey into the world of flea marketing. There was a longer version of this I had recorded earlier, but had to do it in two parts, and just kind of don't want to get into the editing of that. Plus, it's a little bit too long, so I'm going to try to make this one, short as possible. So I'm going to try to do with these flea market stories, But I do have a lot to say on this particular thing, so this one might go long. Okay. This is probably the most notable thing that happened this past weekend. And it was not a good thing. Sometimes you lull yourself into a false sense of security, right? Last Saturday, last Sunday, the previous Saturday, all 3 days, it's glorious. There was no Damien. And to some of you just tuning in, Damien is basically this kid that is annoying as fuck. And anywhere he goes, he is cancer for sales. He is very annoying. A lot of kids are annoying, but this kid takes the cake, right? And I thought I was pretty much done with Damien because, I wrongly thought there'd never been 3 days straight where he had not been there. So I thought, you know what? Maybe he found a new foster family. Maybe they're somewhere far, far away. Because, like I said, his guardian there had been advertising him on the television for, someone to foster him. And she had been basically asking a lot of people at tables, if they'd like, Damien, which surprisingly a lot of people said, no, we do not. But he came back. Now at this point, it was actually turning into a good day. I was having a better sales day than I was the day before. It was the glorious return of not only the arcade, because I didn't have room to really fully do the arcade because I've been driving smaller cars, but it was the return, first day back there, of the Impala. And the Impala needs some transmission solenoids replaced. But overall, Impala is going to be my weekend vehicle, the flea marketing vehicle, and you can fit twice as much in an Impala as you can in one of my Nissans. So everything was just going great. And I'm telling you, you could not, if you would see my smile turn into a frown, the very moment I heard, "Hey, Rick," I was like, no, he's back. He's back. Now, my setup to the left of me, it's very important to mention also, it was a Sunday, so I had my main assistant. Angel's my main assistant. Then I had my second assistant, which is Jonathan. Jonathan's the guy who basically rides around in a scooter, and his father passed away recently. So those two were my assistants. They were on 2 game systems, playing, testing games and whatnot, a little mixture of both. They were on 2 stools on the outside corner. Then there was one system, an Xbox One I had set up. The others were 360s. The Xbox One, which ironically used to be Damien's Xbox One. He traded me an Xbox One for a 360 because he really, really wanted the 360. I went for the deal because, I can make maybe twice as much for a Xbox One versus a 360. So I was like, okay, all right. So here he is. He's playing his old system. Doesn't want it back. He still likes his 360. And he's playing Watch Dogs. That's what I had in there first. Instantly, he starts asking, if he could have a stool. And I say, no. I make up a rule on the fly. I make this up. Only thing I could think of was, I said, the stools are for me and my assistants. Now, I'll have to probably go back on that if he comes by and he sees someone else on the stool, but that's all I could think of. I might modify that in the future, but I just didn't want him there. So the last thing I want to do is give an annoying kid a stool so he can be there for a long time. Then he asks these follow-up questions like, I'm your assistant. I'm like, no, you're not my assistant. You're not my assistant. You just come here and you play games. You're not my assistant. He's not my assistant. He's not my son. But he wrongly thinks he's these things, right? By the way, if some of you don't know, this kid is 8 years old. Very smart for 8 years old. I will say that. Very smart for 8 years old. So he's playing this game, Watch Dogs, and he wants me to switch out the games. I don't even know why, but I switched out to another game because he was being very annoying, and he kept asking these things about the game. No, I switched out another game. Okay. Then he had problems with that game. I think it was a Batman game. Then I switched him back to another game, and I switched him back to that game. We're not going to do any more switching. I told him, like, okay, no more switching. If you come here in the future, you're lucky enough to be here playing the game. And for a second, I was like, okay, that's his old system. Maybe I'm letting him say goodbye to his old system. That was not lost upon me. That literally used to be his system. So that's one reason I kind of want to sell that system. I don't want him saying like, well, I want my old system back. I kind of want that one to be sold. Then I noticed that the table is vibrating a bit. Not vibrating, but shaking a little bit. The TVs were shaking a little bit. It's because he's getting really into the game, and he's kind of, jumping up and down as a kid does, like a jumping bean. And I guess like his legs were hitting the bottom of the table and whatnot. And I says to him, you've got to stop jumping up and down. You got to stop that, all right? You move into TVs when you do that. And then this 8-year-old kid, says to me, the moment it made me mad, but now looking back, okay, I can see the humor in it. He says to me, well, this wouldn't be happening if I had a stool. So I'm thinking, is he doing that on purpose? Is he spazzing out on purpose because he wants a stool? Also, he's very resourceful. He looked around and he saw the table beside of me, lady beside of me. By the way, lady beside of me says she's selling a Lexus SUV for $2,500. I'm like, ooh, a Lexus, which is higher brand than Toyota. SUV, I could really use that for the flea marketing. $2,500, not bad. I might have to take her up on that offer. But I'd probably put the money back into my vehicles right now that need some issues. But still, Alexa for $2,500, not too bad. But he looks behind and he starts to ask, and I shut him off. He starts to ask, hey, can I have that? Not can I borrow it? Can I have that chair? And I say, no, you're not going to be asking anyone else for a chair. So there's all these rules I'm actually having to set down, and that's why I'm going to make a list. I'm going to present this list next time I see him. I'm like, okay, I've not had to make rules for anyone else, but you're the first person I've had to actually make rules for, right? So we're going to correct your behavior here if you're going to continue to come. I'm going to have to make some kind of a deal because I'm not outright banning him. I'm not going to do that, okay? Not unless he does something that's really terrible is where I'm going to ban him. But I will do things like take his stool away from one. That's step one. I will tell him what systems he can play on. I will make sure he doesn't move the systems around, take any games out. I will do these things. He will be controlled if he's going to be there. If he can't be controlled, then I'll just tell him you can't be controlled. And, could talk to your guardian about you not coming back here unless you can be controlled. And he can say, sorry this, sorry that. I love you, Rick. You're my dad. I feel like you're my dad. Like all that stuff. Like, no, that doesn't matter. It's now that I'm a heartless person. I told him, I want you to be here. I want you to have fun while you're here. But you're just going to be playing the game I tell you to play. Right? So I was surprised that he actually stood for a while. Stood for almost an hour in that spot. Now, if it was any other person, if it was any other kid, I would feel bad. Not offering a stool. But granted, I actually did have an extra stool. But, not even offering my stool to the person to sit down if it was anybody else. So I'll say, he was dedicated to be there, Well, I was wondering where his guardian was. His guardian was not within earshot unless you're yelling. Not like regular talking voice. So, I'll have to correct that. I might have to talk to the guardian and say, listen, if you're going to leave him here, it can only be for 10 minutes at a time. And, you're going to need to be somewhat nearby. Just because, a lot of people come through here. And I can't be like watching him constantly. I can't be. I'll just say I can't be. Or, maybe I'll start charging you a babysitting fee or something like that. There's some audio that accompanies this. I don't think I'm going to include it on this. That's going to be separate chat, but that's something that actually one of the assistants bring up, which is a great idea, by the way, a babysitting fee. Because essentially that's what you're doing. If the parents come by and drop their kids off, then, basically after like 10 minutes, then it becomes babysitting. I'm going to actually have a timer set up also. Oh, I'm getting ready for Damien the next time. I'm going to have a timer set up with a wait, I can't do a rooster. I can't do a rooster, I just can't, right? Maybe I'll work on that, in my downtime. But I'm going to have this alarm set up and a rooster goes off in 10 minutes. I'll be friendly. I'll be smiling. I'll be like, oh, buddy, it looks like the 10 minutes is up. Come back tomorrow. You can have another 10 minutes. And then he'll wonder, how can I get more than 10 minutes? How can I get this? I'm like, this is just them the rules. That's the Damien rules, And maybe I'll keep him like happy, thinking like, hey, one day maybe we won't need this, but right now we do. Maybe when you get older, maybe we won't need the Damien rules, but right now, as the 8-year-old Damien, right now, this is how it is. And he'll ask, can I be your assistant? I'm like, no. Assistants have to be, even junior assistants have to be 11 and up. And why am I making that rule? Because there's this one kid that comes by, always plays skate, and he's 11. So like I said, we're making those rules on the fly. That'll buy me some time. That'll buy me, 2-3 years. 2.5 years, if he's like halfway on his way to 9 years old. Yeah, that'll buy me some time. By then, maybe he won't even be there. By then, maybe he'll be with another foster family. I'm not sure. I can't leave this off without saying that I deliberated with my assistants after that, and we talked about some other things, which I'm not going to get into. I'll just say that there was conversations about possibly theft in regards to him, and he might be being taught, being groomed to steal. I don't know. I don't have any proof on that. Something's going on with that family, with his foster family, is all I'm going to say. And then I might, delve into that a little more later when I have some more info. But there was one point during this visit that made me very angry, very angry. Angriest I've been all week. And I basically just laid into Damien. I mean, I didn't lay hands on Damien, didn't do anything like I didn't, like I'm not that kind of person. Like, that's not my kid and everything. There was no hickory switch. There was nothing like that. Because I'm not his guardian, even though he thinks I'm his dad, right? But if you saw it from a distance, you would think it was a dad scolding his child, right? Damien broke the rule. Damien broke the major rule. The major rule is not to get in the way of me and my sales. When I'm working, when I'm selling, when I'm talking to somebody, don't get in the way of me selling something. Don't interrupt me when I'm talking to a customer trying to sell something. Don't interrupt me specifically when I'm in that area trying to sell one of the game consoles to somebody. Now, later on, I found out that this was actually not someone really probably interested, but he was just asking about pricing. I think he said he sold games on the other side of the flea market. Maybe he was doing reconnaissance. Maybe he was trying to figure out some things. It seemed like he was more like just kind of impressed with the whole setup, maybe as a salesperson to a salesperson. And I said, hey, there might be some things I might need to buy from you in the future. Maybe you got some cables I might need or what. It could be like, between the both of us, I don't want there to be like competition and whatnot. I like to basically, anyone that's selling similar things, I like to buy something from them, initially to be like, hey, I need one of these, right? So that kind of, lays it down to where like, hey, or I give them a deal on something that I have. One of the golden rules of the flea market is, you kind of give a discount to fellow tables, and then, they kind of do the same for you. I know I've gotten slight discounts because I'm a fellow seller, and that's what I do for other people. It seems like, I don't know if it's a golden rule, but that's just what I've noticed from table to table. But what he did was made me mad was when I was talking to this person. This is another nightmare scenario. I talked about another nightmare Damien scenario. This is the second time I've been trying to sell game consoles to somebody, and he's interrupted me, and he's gotten in the way of it. One time he was dropped off there, and he had nowhere to go. This is the second time he potentially ruined a console sale. I mean, he wasn't going to buy something, but what if he was? He was, that's what I'm thinking about. What if this person came by and was there and was actually going to, buy a game console? What Davey did was, it was about that game he was playing. It seemed like, like a kid, he wants attention. And he wasn't getting attention. And I was giving this guy attention. And he wanted that attention about the game. He kept asking questions about the game. And he would not quit asking questions. Seems like the very moment that guy got there, he asked more questions because I was in that area. I'd been behind the table, not paying Damien any attention, but, I literally have to go and be near Damien when I'm selling the, showing the game consoles off. And the assistant saw this. And then after he left, I went to the right of the table. He got me a drink of water, I calm myself down, what would have been like me yelling at Damien. I go over and I go, hey, Damien, we need to talk. So I was trying to sell a game console there. And you know what you did? You kept interrupting me. What's the one thing I told you not to do? I mentioned this because he started to before when I was talking to some people on the other side of the table that said, like, when you see this hand, it means be quiet. Don't say anything. Don't ask me anything. I said, I'm here to sell things, Damien. If I don't sell things here, then I can't come back here. If I'm not selling things, and I forget some of the things I said to him. And he also said, well, I hope you sell things. I'm like, no, you don't. You come here, you play the games, you don't buy anything, and now you interrupt and get in the way of my sales. And then he did the whole like, well, I love you, Rick. I'm sorry. And then he kind of hugged me. And I was just kind of like, it just feels like an act to me right now. I don't know. Like, I don't know what this kid's deal is. He is beyond his years in manipulation. I will say that. But there's maybe like a little spark, maybe a little bit that could be genuine. I mean, this kid's life is messed up. All right, I told you all that when he was 5 years old, he was taken away from his parents. They were caught doing drugs and having sex, and he was taken away. Now he's potentially with a guardian who doesn't care that much about him and might be using him to steal and do reconnaissance and find out what's at tables. I don't, but it's not my issue. Towards the end, like, I didn't fully lay into him. I laid back a little bit. It's kind of like that whisper, because I was like, hey, Damien, like that whisper, right? That loud whisper, you know what I'm saying? That everyone can hear, but you try to because I don't want the other table seeing me yelling at a kid. It's not a good look. That's another thing. Like, if Damien is there, I can only do so much. Whereas if it's a grown adult, I could be like, hey, bro, leave, bro. Quit asking me questions, man. I'm trying to sell them. But because as a kid, it's different. It is different. But I basically said, hey, I'm trying to recall what he was saying. What did he say? He mentioned also that I love you, Rick. I feel like, I'm sorry. He hugged me and he said, like, I have some things to bring you. Some game stuff. I'll just give you. And I'm like, in that moment I said, what the fuck am I going to do? Did I wrongfully, am I wrong? Is this kid like mostly innocent, but could the parents be putting him up to, I mean, he comes to see me and my table because he likes to play games and he thinks I'm his dad, whatnot. Could I be wrong? Is what I thought the minute he started talking about coming and bringing me things. Because, of course, I'm not going to accept any gifts from a kid. I mean, who am I? I'm Radical Rick. I'm not fucking beat 'em ups. I'm not Wood Hawker. I don't accept gifts from children, all right? All right, only the scum of the earth accept gifts and video game stuff from children without paying them or giving them stuff in return.